All right, so we've got some raw fibers that need to be processed from stinging nettle, Urtica dioica, a buckthorn uh, twig or tip that's got a Y shape in it. We've already cut one half. I would suggest you work the end part first before you do any cutting, but whatever. And then we have cut a groove in to the main shaft, both to fit the tongue of our shaft, but also to attach a tether, so if this works loose, the fish just wiggles in it and we don't lose our line or anything like that. So I've got the fibers here that I'm going to have to process to make them really flexible so I can twist them into cordage. Again, I got another video on how to twist cordage and how to process nettle fibers. Two ways you can do it. So I won't go through that, but that'll be the process. Alright, so I've come to the end of my very rustic piece of nettle cordage here, and I'm just going to tie this off with the overhand knot. And still a little wet, and then, you know, it's rustic looking because it's not completely refined, and that's kind of the way I like some things. It's like it doesn't have to, everything have to be so pretty. There's some elegance within roughness, but yet it still works. All right, this is technology that's been working for hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years. Don't know where we got it from. We just, I guess you sit in a cave somewhere, you'll figure it out. Bored enough, hungry enough, you'll figure it out. So I can cut off some of the stragglers, but what we have here is a piece of cordage that we will use as our tether. And we don't need all of this. I'm going to need to process and make more cordage for our finished piece, but all in all, for the tether, that's what we're going to be using. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to tie this on to our shaft here. And basically, I'm just going to take this, and I have enough space to go around once. And then I'm going to twist this around on the main line here. And my running end, I'm going to put through the hole and then cinch it tight. See, nettle cordage is pretty strong, so I can, that's why we're using it, so I can kind of cinch this down tight, and that's not going anywhere. Alright, and we'll just leave this on. You never know if we could use this piece later. You could cut it off, but sometimes when you do that, you end up, if the line slips, then your knot comes undone. So that's how we're tethering this on. So now we have a piece, and again, the idea is to take this and tether this onto this piece here, probably using the same sort of knot. There's many ways you can do this, and then that way when it's in here, it'll just come off, but the fish won't go anywhere. Alright, so I have the thorns from our buckthorn, and heck, if you got locust trees, they tend to have a real nice big long thorn. You could use those and not have to shape and scrape a piece, right? I could take this piece here, which we may use later as a matter of fact, and shape it. It's got a little bit of char on it, fire harden it, and shape it so that it's nice and sharp. And again, we may use this piece here, but I'm going to make use of the thorn that's part of the tree itself, and we want to attach it accordingly, like so. Okay, so it can be somewhat long. We want it to be about like that. Okay, and so yeah, we got to figure out a way to attach this on. And actually, I feel that our angle of cut needs to be a little sharper. So like the 15 or maybe 20-degree angle. Okay. So yeah, we're looking at something like that. Okay. So now we got to attach this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cutting tool, and this side is a little wider, and I just kind of want to, you know, whittle it down or shape it down so it's more accommodating to the width of our thorn here. Don't have to do this, but it's just kind of what I feel I need to do for this particular project. Something to keep in mind, right? Okay, so this will fit in here like that. Alright, which should hold our fish for the size that we're going towards. And then next, what we'll want to do is we'll want to cut a notch in the back of the prong here. So in the back here, we'll want to cut a notch, and that's to hold the cordage. And we can just take our blade here. We don't have to go very deep, just a little bit, and just make it so that our wrapping, our cordage, doesn't slip. If we were whittling this piece of the thorn, or the barb, I should say, out of a different piece of wood, okay, if we were whittling our barb out of a different piece of wood or a thicker piece of wood, we would do the same. We'd make a notch here because we're going to have to wrap this to make sure that this stays on and secure. Okay, well, we want it about like that, and maybe, yeah, that's about right. And again, I want to continue to kind of make a groove or a trough in this to hold on to our cordage. Okay, so next we're going to apply our Bushcraft Glue, which is basically pine pitch. It's been treated with a little bit of charcoal, and this is going to be our glue that's going to stick the barb onto our spear tip, like so. Okay, so we need a little bit of glue, and it's waterproof. It's not heat proof, because if it gets hot enough, you keep something like this in your car or in direct heat, it'll come apart, because this is heat, you know, sensitive, right? So that's why I've got my little handy dandy modern flame tool, because I'm doing this in the house and not outside, which I could use a ember or the heat from the fire to do. So I want to melt this down, get this a little wet where it's drippy, and then I want to take some of this while it's wet and gooey and wrap it on here. Put it on there. I want a good amount, yeah. So I'll do it again just to be safe. Be careful, do not burn yourself with this stuff, because you can. So now that we have the pitch on here, I want to go ahead, and the idea is I want to heat this up and stick this to the pitch at the right angle. Okay, so go ahead and I can kind of heat this up a little bit. And then slide this in. That should be about right. Okay, so we got something that starts to look like this. And then while the pitch is still malleable, I can kind of wrap this in a little bit around it. Don't burn yourself, but this will hold it in. All right. There. So that's nice, and you can shape it and mold it so it holds nicely. Okay, so we have a configuration that starts to look like that. Okay, now I'm going to need some more cordage, and we got extras from when we were making our tether, and really we can just use this as a lashing. It does not have to be super duperly refined into perfect cordage or even twisted. Just should be long enough that you can work with. Okay, and I'm going to do common whipping again, so I'm making a loop or a bite. We'll put it alongside. We got a little piece of bark here that's going to be a bother. Alright, so I want to put it alongside the shaft here. You may not be able to see this, sorry for the poor lighting. But now, all I want to do is I want to start to wrap this cordage and make sure I get it in the grooves so it doesn't come undone. Wrap this cordage around until I get to my loop, and I can do this a couple of times with different lashings if I need to or feel it's necessary. So that's around, and then I can pull this slightly underneath like that. Okay, and then I can continue to secure this by wrapping this around and then just doing half hitches in it, and I could do it again if I wanted to with another piece of cordage. Okay, but for now I'm just going to leave it like as is because I think it's elegant enough, and I'm pretty sure this will hold. That's all it is. So I'm getting rid of the straggling pieces of cordage that I don't need, and I can lightly heat this a little bit to get rid of any loose fibers, but also to bind the pitch to the lashing. Okay, but I don't want to put it directly onto, because I don't want to burn the lashings off like that. And now the pitch and the lashings are going to be bound together, and this ain't going nowhere. That ain't coming off. Alright, and then what I can just do is then snip this, get rid of this at an angle. Okay, so that's how we attach our barb, and we could fashion a barb, or we can just use the thorn or the natural resource of the tree or bush or whatever we're using itself. Okay, so we had to doctor it up a little bit. It's not the same as this one, and that's fine, as long as it works. That's all we care about. And now we can go ahead and snip the end off. There we go. Okay, and again, we could add more pitch and cordage, but we don't want to make it too thick. So this is the start, and even in itself, it probably worked pretty good. Even just if this all you had, you could probably catch something if it's big enough. You you want to split it, and then the barbs will hook or catch on to the your quarry, your fish or whichever. But we're going to go a step further, and what we have to do yet with a step further is a middle piece. So we want a piece approximately like that, and this piece might be too big. We'll have to work a little bit. I have a piece of willow here that I may I'll use some pieces off of, and we'll go ahead and work that. Okay, so the next step in the process is we're gonna have to split this as best we can so that we can fit this piece in the middle, just like that. Okay, and Before I do that, the one key to keep from splitting unnecessarily deep is to apply some cordage or some wrapping to the end here. Okay, so we've got a tether here using common whipping with just some lashings of nettle cordage. Could be whatever cordage. And I could tie this off into a nice knot or loop, and this could be part of our tether. Okay, just to give you some ideas. So even if you can or don't want to do all this notching, you could still, you know, make it so that the tip attaches to the shaft and your tether can attach to this loop. If you see what's going on here, okay? As an idea, you could do that. The whole idea so you don't lose your shaft. That's just the idea of it. Anyways, that's pretty good. That's pretty good in there. Oh, I see it looped around the fibers. Can be tricksy. And then I can cut that off. Okay. And then again, I could bind this with more pine pitch, but the idea is to make a split so it doesn't split all the way down the middle. Alright, so that's really what we're gonna do, and we can do as we had done before and kind of make a hole so there's as a stopper. That's what the hole does, it's kind of an additional stopper. You don't have to do this part. I'm using a more skinnier tip or edge. Okay, so we cut in a groove a little bit. We'll see if we can make this work. I have a feeling I need to go a little deeper, or at least make it a little wider. Okay. Yeah, so that's what we want. All right, we're good. So now we have to take the time to shape and whittle down our piece so that it slides in between and creates our third barb, like so. And so I want to do that first. See if we can slide it in there. Okay. So I'm going to be careful not to get myself with my own prongs, but I can slide this in here a bit, and if I make it too thin it'll break. Okay, so it starts to look like a cool little trident. Alright, so Jason Momoa, you know, eat your heart out. Just kidding. It's Aquaman, whatever. Cool little trident nonetheless. So I'm going to cut this down a little bit more and continue to shape, because we want it stout. We want long enough but stout enough. Okay, so again I'm going to use my braiding, kind of shape as I need, but I don't want it too thin, because what'll happen is it'll just break on me. And so it's enough to where now I can kind of wedge this in between. Alrighty then, so this is the configuration that we're kind of working on here. I gotta adjust it a little bit. At this size it kind of gets a little nitpicky, and I also want to kind of fire harden this a little bit. Technically with the third piece here, or even with the barb, when you fire harden, you let them soak in some oil, tallow, for a little bit, and then you put them over the flame, and then you sharpen them, and you just kind of repeat till you get a nice hard tip. So that's kind of what I'm doing here, and I'm gonna rely on the braiding to sharpen this center prong. Okay, and that should give me the length that I need. Okay, all right. So I want to be able to fit this in, basically wedge it in the center, and this should be the right, once I pop it in here, it should be the right length that I need for this, which is good enough. Okay, so this is the configuration we want, but we got to secure it in there. And how are we going to do that? Again, is with pitch and cordage. So then what we'll want to do is we'll want to heat this up again, this end, and wedge it and work it in the center. Some of this I may have to do off camera to get it just right, but that's the concept, that's the idea. So what I want to do is take my heat source, kind of get this nice and liquidy, and quickly wedge this in here and make sure it's centered and it looks right. So I think that's pretty good. I'm gonna take some extra pine pitch and wedge some in the grooves here as extra glue. Oops, I should probably do this over the metal container. And then I can continue to heat this. And as long as it's cool enough but malleable to the touch, I can work it into the crevices. Don't burn your fingers. Okay. So the pitch is starting to take hold, right? Put a little bit more on here and we should be good to go. Alright, so this is kind of what we have here. Kind of loosen quick, very rustic. And this is in here, it's not going anywhere. And again, I can continue to refine this pitch using my heat source and shaping it and kind of making sure stuff is glued into place. Uh-oh, need more fire. But I think we're kind of good with that for now. Alright, so we're almost done. Bit of a process. Sorry I'm off camera a bit. You know, don't claim to be the best or biggest cameraman, person, whatever. But there it is. This is the configuration that we want. And I'm going to process some fibers so that we can wrap this nice and well. About ready to go, but what we need to do is wrap it up so that it's more secure and everything stays together. And so I processed a bit of some nettle fibers here to make some cordage, and So this is our configuration here with our, and the middle part could be a bit more pointier, a bit more sharp, but for demo purposes, this will work. It's wedged in there with pine pitch. And now what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it with some cordage. And this is nettle fibers here, some nettle cordage, roughly made, quickly twisted, because it doesn't need to be perfect. So I'm just going to wrap this around the edges, probably to about right here. Doesn't have to be all the way up, because this is just a smaller piece, but to secure and make stronger the shaft here, in case it hits bottom or something hard, it won't split or knock out. So that's a purpose of this wrapping, and I will be using common whipping to do so, but for the most part, that's the next step. Okay, so I have this whipped around, and I've got the end worked through the loop here, and I'm going to take this end and pull it. And this is fairly thick. It could be finer. I could have really twisted this much finer, but the whole point is the business end here. So I'm not really caring about how elegant it looks. I just want this to be secure and tied on there. All right, so that'll be the next step. So idealistically, if this was small enough, the cordage is, this bit here would be pulled partially underneath the wrapping, but it's kind of thick, so it's not going to happen, and I'm not going to force it to. What we did talk about earlier is making a tether. At this point, this could be a tether to our end shaft here. All right, but we're not going to worry about that for now because we have another way to do that. But that's one option, just so that you know. This piece would be this piece here would be snipped short, and you call it a day. The whole idea is, again, to keep the shaft from splitting on impact and to keep the prongs closer together. All right, so I took the working end here and I kind of wove it up and down through each prong. And then I'm just going to half hitch and tie it off and call it a day. Okay, so for the most part, here's the finished wrapping. And I'm sealing the ends with the pine pitch here. Not the prettiest, but it'll work. Again, this is supposed to be functional, not decorative. If that would be the case, then there would be a lot more time spent on carving and shaping and making finer cordage, etc., etc. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and tether the female end to the male end with our tethering line. All right, so I have the cordage all wrapped on here on our fish head, or fish spear head. And so what I want to do is I want to tether the shaft to the spearhead. And so all I'm going to do is just going to do, I want about that. It could be more, it could be less. But I'll give it this much just for clarity on camera. I'm just going to wrap around twice, because we have that much space in the groove that we previously cut. And then I want to take my cordage and wrap around maybe twice. And then there's a space or a loop here that I'm going to feed the running in through, like so. It helps to wet your cordage as well. Again, I'm using saliva in this particular case, but I can hold this in here and really kind of reef on this a bit, make sure it's nice and tight. Make sure my ends, my barbs and stuff don't bang on anything to dull them or break them. And again, I could seal the knots with some pine pitch, but for the most part, this ain't going nowhere. Okay, so I'm just going to tie this down. I may do it one more time, but yeah, Nettle Cordage is extremely strong. It's a textile fiber used around the world, so it's not some like backwards or backwoods sort of weed thingy that you just kind of pick up. And I'm making up. People have made clothing out of this stuff for thousands of years, if not millions. So we just think of it as a weed because that's the way we're conditioned here in first world countries. Anyways, that's a whole nother political commentary. Not for this channel, but anyways, we've got this tethered on. We could we'll slide this on the onto the shaft, and it pinches nicely, so it holds it in place solidly until it hits something, and then it'll most likely work itself or wiggle it off, but we still have the tether, which is the point. All right, so for the most part, that's pretty much it. We're finished. I can snip this, cut this end off, and what I may do is I may just make a knot. I make a knot. That way it doesn't come undone on me unbeknownst. And I want the knot close, or basically right on my finished knot here. Makes it a little bulky because of the size of the cordage, but this is a rustic piece, so we don't, who cares? As long as it doesn't go anywhere. When you got something, you got fish on, you don't lose your fish, and you don't lose your gear. So there, got that. Probably take some more refined cutting tool, and so there we have it. There it is, the finished piece. You need to stick it on. You've got your cordage attached to it. You've got your 3-prong trident going on. And what I have to do next for this piece is, as you can see, is straighten the shaft so it's nice and straight, which I'm just going to use fire to do. This is a green piece of wood here, so there may be some drying and shrinkage and maybe a little crackage, but for something that you can use in the field quick and dirty, this is how you would do it. You know, you'd want to dry out your piece beforehand, and then do all your magic to it, so that it doesn't warp on you. But you know, sometimes it's easier just to work the fibers, work your material when it's green or wet. It whittles better, etc., etc. Excuse me. Anyways, there's your 3-prong fish spear for this demo. I'll probably do some more enhancements. I want to try to get out here and use it in some way, shape, or form. Not quite sure. You know, check your laws on that. You know, whether you can or not. But in a pinch, this is how you would fashion such a weapon. And you don't have to make this sort of joining feature. This could be one solid piece. The idea is to make sure that you get your barbs into your